The House of Commons Library has been serving the parliamentarians of the United Kingdom for nearly 200 years. In the early days, what made it unique was its location. It was situated here in the historic Palace of Westminster, just a few steps from the House of Commons chamber, where the debates were held. It was a magnificent collection of books, periodicals, pamphlets, and a whole range of other items that tempted the parliamentarian to come in and browse and find what they wanted to see. As we moved into the 20th century, the demands on the library service changed, as the role of individual members of parliament changed. They were looking for more advice, more in-depth expertise, so we changed with them. We established a dedicated research service, comprising constitutional experts, lawyers, statisticians, economists, scientists, a whole range of other people who could bring together all the knowledge that members needed to make sense of the questions that they were asked. And we could provide them answers to their questions and analysis on the key issues that were coming up for debate. As we moved into the 21st century, the landscape changed again. Parliamentarians were spending more and more time away from Westminster in their constituencies, working in their communities around the country. They were hiring more specialist research staff for themselves. They were increasingly computer literate. They can Google things like anyone else. And the kinds of inquiries we were getting were changing. And we could see we also needed to adapt to the sorts of things that individual MPs wanted today. Whereas in the past, the key thing was the uniqueness of our location, we couldn't rely on that now because members themselves weren't always here. In the past, we could rely on the fact we had a fantastic range of expertise, and the people within the library are the most extraordinary asset, the most incredible group of people I've ever worked with. But we couldn't rely just on that. We needed to rely on an extra dimension, and that's what we've focused on over the last 5 years. And that's going to be the main topic of discussion in what I'm sharing with you this afternoon. The key thing we have, because we are here, is the ability to build a relationship with each and every Member of Parliament. Whatever their party political affiliation, whatever the interests they have, we can get under the skin of what it's like to be them. We can understand and anticipate the kinds of questions they are going to be asked. We recognise, as no one else does, the pressures they have on time, the fact they have to be in many different places, often seemingly at once. We can tailor our services absolutely precisely to their needs. They're very different needs. A key watershed for us was the 2005 general election. That brought in 120 new members to the House. And we asked ourselves the question, will they know what kind of resource they have in the House of Commons Library? Will they ever come across us? So the first thing we did was to write to each individual member as soon as they arrived and offer them a one-to-one meeting where someone from the library would go to them and we wouldn't wait anymore for them to come to us. We'd discuss with them the kinds of services they want. We'd look at how we could tailor what we provide to meet precisely what they needed. At the same time, we also went out around the parliamentary estate to the places where members do spend their time and made sure we put our materials where they would come across them. We would have advertising space on the walls, in the lifts, that would help them see, oh, there's an interesting library presentation going on next week, I'll get along to that. We had changed our ethos from waiting for them to come to us to being much more active in going to them. So how did it work? Well, of those 120, only one of them wrote back to me and said, I don't want to have a visit. I don't want you to come to my office and talk to me about your service. So I think we felt we were onto a winner. And the next thing that happened as I was walking down the corridor, members who were in the previous Parliament were coming up to me and saying, what's all this you're doing with the new members? Why can't we have some of that as well? So we rolled it out to all of members. And since then, we've had a programme of visits that happens. The latest one has started in the last week, where we are targeting particular groups of members with personal visits from individual staff going to them to find out how we can tailor our services. We also recognise that we need to help the people, those individual members, work most closely with themselves, their own research staff. So we organised events for people working in the constituency, some of whom had never ever been to Westminster before, thinking about what it's like to be them in their particular offices, often very cramped, often very difficult positions, often under a huge amount of pressure. How can we help them do their jobs better? So we built on the fantastic collection we have. We still have it, we must keep building it. We built on the most extraordinary range of people that we've assembled in this institution, who are the experts in their fields. They are completely impartial in what they provide, and members can be confident that when they get a briefing from us, they can trust it. But we've taken it one stage further and got out of our offices, gone to work with them, make ourselves much more welcoming.
Here in the Members' Library, we provide reading room facilities for Members of Parliament. We also provide face-to-face inquiry service for them and a telephone inquiry service and an email helpline for members and their staff. In recent years, we've placed more emphasis on promoting library services more effectively. One of the things we've been doing is reviewing all our publicity material. We've produced a range of new leaflets, all with consistent branding, including a small credit card size fold-out, which is called 10 Things the Library Can Do For You. We've also introduced an information literacy programme, which includes things like drop-in surgeries, one-to-one visits, and we've reviewed the training programme so that it's really concentrating far more on the sorts of information people are trying to find rather than the sources that we use to find them. We have been looking very carefully at the customer experience so that when a member comes in to use the library services, they find a friendly, welcoming and professional environment. We started by looking at the physical space. Around us here we've got a suite of really lovely rooms which were designed as a library when the building was put up in Victorian times. It's furnished with original Pugin furniture and fittings, but we needed to make sure that it's tidy, clean and clutter-free. The most difficult part of that was probably making sure that staff desks and work areas were kept clutter-free. And interestingly, the thing that drew most complimentary comments from our customers was keeping the main doors to the main entrance open all the time, which gave a lovely vista as people came in. We reviewed all the signage in the library. A lot of it was in ugly holders or had a very negative message. We made sure that we had as little signage as possible. It all looked the same, was branded with library branding and carried no negative messages. We also worked very hard with parliamentary IT support to ensure that the PCs provided in the library for members' use worked swiftly and well, which hadn't always been the case. Another innovation put in place about 2.5 years ago was the Members' Centre in Portcullis House on the northern side of the estate, where a lot of members have their offices. This was envisaged as a place where members could go to get face-to-face advice from services across the house. The most popular is probably the IT support service. A lot of members bring in their mobiles, their PDAs and their laptops when they can't get them to work and appreciate being able to speak to IT support face to face. They can also, of course, speak to a librarian, and they place a range of inquiries covering accommodation, bookings for visitors, to how do I get my post. The range is extraordinary. It's also a fantastic location for distributing library briefings, and we have a steady stream of people coming in every day.
So we made a lot of progress, and we were very careful to measure our progress. At the time of the 2005 general election, we reckoned a little bit over 50% of all members we could say were regular customers of the library. Despite fearing that would drop off with a whole load of new members coming in, the reverse happened, and by the end of the last Parliament, 75% of members were regular customers ours and rising.
My name is Bryn Morgan. I'm the Director of Research Services here at the House of Commons Library. The 2010 general election was always going to be a major event for us. With boundary changes, members retiring and a possible change of government, we were looking at a change of between a third and a half of our regular users. We knew that we needed to do something in order to attract these new members to our services. The idea we came up with was to produce a document highlighting the research output of the library. It was actually an idea we borrowed from the Australian Parliamentary Library. We called this book Key Issues for the New Parliament, and the idea was it was both to raise awareness of members of the key issues that were facing this new Parliament, but also to highlight the skills and knowledge that we had in our organisation and that was available to them to use. The book was to contain briefings from each of our specialists on the most important issues in their area. We came up with the concept of a 2-page briefing for each subject, 62 in all, in a very easy to read format with lots of diagrams, tables, charts. The subjects ranged from energy policy to the economy, but also contained analysis of the election and the new intake of MPs. This meant that we were writing right up to the deadline, particularly given the negotiations over the coalition. This meant that we really didn't have too long to put the finishing touches to the document.
What we were able to do with that briefing note was show that A, we were tuned to what they wanted, B, we understood their pressures on time, and C, we could present something that introduced them to a whole range of other services. The result has been that since the 2010 general election, the pickup of our services from this new member group has probably been faster than ever. And I think we're in good shape now to take the library forward for another wave of innovation over the 5 years ahead.